Hello there, welcome to Tuesday's edition of the Nation Update. I'm Jessy Chahal. Thanks for being with me. Let's take a quick look at what are some of the salient points or discussions that has happened at the Parliament earlier this morning. In case you missed it, the status of the implementation of the Undi 18 and the steps to be taken by the government to implement the move is among the focus at today's Parliament sitting. Also, other focuses include the total expenditure on the immunization program nationwide according to the vaccination centres, and whether the ministry will reduce the price of the COVID-19 self-test kits in stages from the current 19 ringgit 90 cent ceiling price. So those were some of the things in discussion at the Parliament. Today I'll be speaking to two guests on the program. Do stick on, as joining me in just a short while is Tengku Zarina, Tengku Chik, the CEO of Securities Industry Development Corporation, or known as SIDC, on transforming learning for the Malaysian capital market. Also, I speak to Dr. Syazatul, Syakirin, Sirol, Aflah, who will join me to talk about Pulmonary Fibrosis Awareness Month. Of course, she's a physician and she will be weighing in a little bit on this as well. Now, here's a quick look at what was on the plate at the Dewan Rakyat. Earlier today, the Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs Minister, Datuk Sri Alexander Nantalinggi, had this to say. He says the government is studying all factors to find ways to lower the price of rapid COVID-19 self-test kits and other home assessment kits before taking the best approach on the matter. Let's face it, in the new norm, these are things we need to have in our little home safety kit, in our little home clinic. Now, he's also noted that the ministry will continue to monitor the prices of these products from time to time. So rest assured that these are some of the issues being considered and being evaluated by the MPs. Also, a minister in the Prime Minister's Department of Parliament and Law, Datuk Sri Dr. Wan Junaidi Tuanku Jaafar, has said that the government has decided to go ahead with the implementation of the Undi 18 and the automatic voter registration by December 31st this year at the latest, as ordered by the Kuching High Court. And so, good news is the Cabinet has also agreed not to appeal the High Court's decision, not causing any more delay to this particular outcome. The minister has reiterated and, of course, was responding to Gobind Singh Deo, who asked about the status of Undi 18 and the steps which the government will take in implementing it. We're seeing progress after progress through the discussions and the tabling that's been happening at the Parliament as well. From the desk of the Higher Education Minister, Datuk Sri Dr. Raini Ahmad, she says more than 90% of polytechnic graduates should be able to get employment for a period for the next 5 years. Now, she was responding to V. Sivakumar, who questioned the marketability of polytechnic graduates compared to other institutions. It is September, of course. We are, way into the third week of September, but it also marks the PF Awareness Month, or Pulmonary Fibrosis Awareness Month. It's a globally recognized awareness initiative aimed at raising awareness about the disease, its symptoms, and the need for support. And for this time, I'm joined by Dr. Syazatul Sirol Aflah, Director and Consultant at the Institute Perubatan Respiratory, Kuala Lumpur. Hello, Doctor, and thanks for being with me today. Of course, such an important topic for us to address and raise awareness and also help people understand why this is such a significant day or month, perhaps. First, I'd like to thank you for all the good work that IPR is doing. I know many of you have been on your feet, what more with the pandemic onset. So let's start at the beginning with this. Perhaps you could help us understand, what is lung fibrosis?
Hi, Jessy. Thank you for the invitation. So, as what you have mentioned on the topic is the pulmonary fibrosis. So, pulmonary means lung, and the fibrosis means scar tissue. So, the scar tissue that you've seen on the skin that form after an injury or following an operation is the same scar tissue that occur in the lung. So, in the simplest word, we would say this is a scar tissue in the lung, or lung scar. So in medical term, it's pulmonary fibrosis. So it's actually isn't just a one disease. It has more than 200 different lung scar that appear to look very much alike, but of course they have a different behavior and different pattern on the CT scan. So the awareness is pretty low in the country, and of course it's considered a rare disease. And for this month, we would like to actually increase the awareness through education to the public and also to the healthcare professional as well.
Right, doctor. So when you talked about it being a rare disease, do we have any numbers or stats, especially, that now that also we see that scarring of the lungs is also something, perhaps a side effect that we've been seeing with the virus or COVID-19 as well. Would you agree?
Yes, a very good observation though. And it is something that we are definitely need to study in the long run whether the COVID-19 will cause something permanent scar in the lung in future. We have no idea. Basically, we do follow up our patient, especially those with a severe category of COVID-19. And we do see a number of patients, but not large, do have a permanent scar in the lung following the infection. So, but in general, the lung scar could be due to many causes besides the virus. So, in general, it could be due to some patient because of the age. Usually, elderly will have this more than 60 years of age. Risk factor as such as smoking, and we do have a patient that actually exposed to certain environment that cause inflammation in the lung later on scar, and also
Mhm.
some occupation that actually can cause this, and some familial cause like genetic disease that could cause lung fibrosis, and also autoimmune disease that lead to a lung scar.
Right, doctor. So the term scar in itself tells us that it is almost forever, that it will remain. So, what sort of treatment is there at this point, perhaps even the latest modern treatment for lung fibrosis?
All right. So yeah, people in general would think scar will be there forever, but there are some scar in a subset of pulmonary fibrosis will somehow will go away, but of course it will leave a very minimal tiny scar. Some will just stay as it is, some will progress. So
Mhm.
the treatment that are being offered depending on the type of the lung scar. So some lung scar will just need an anti-inflammatory that to treat the scar until it get better or smaller. And some of the scar will need a treatment that to slow down the disease progression, as in the patient with the progressive lung scar, that we give a anti-fibrotic treatment. So that is a medication, and we do not to forget those who actually has progressed will need even up to the extent require supportive treatment like oxygen therapy, and they do actually require pulmonary rehab, and to some extent we need to replace with a new lung, which is the lung
Right.
transplant.
Okay, well, that's a big job, of course, something that it can be life threatening as well, doctor. Why do you think this awareness is so important, especially during this month when, of course, we recognize and want to raise awareness? Why is it extra important? Perhaps even this year, on set with already the health crisis that we are in. What does it make us think about in terms of how we perhaps take care of our lungs or take care of our health in general?
So basically, because the lung is one of the vital organ for us to breathe in the good, to have a good oxygen, so that it will deliver to our organ, then other organ will definitely function appropriately and in a good condition. So basically, how to take care of our lung? Number one is of course avoid and smoking. And those who are still smoking, stop smoking. We do have treatment for quit smoking, and of course to avoid environment that potential to lead to this lung scarring or any other respiratory diseases such as asthma following smoking that we call COPD. And
Mhm.
lung fibrosis is something very it is not new in other country, but it seems somehow this concept of to know about the lung fibrosis is quite rather new over for the past few years, and we
Mhm.
didn't actually get to the point that this disease is pretty important to know about. So the reason why we creating the awareness is actually to educate other people to come forward when they have a certain symptom, especially prolonged cough with a short of breath, and of course some other clues as well that lead to the diagnosis of lung fibrosis, to come forward to get an early treatment, because timely referral early treatment would actually definitely ensure a good outcome or a better outcome.
That's right. Just with anything, prevention is better than cure, and also early detection, perhaps in this context, is better than finding out at a later point. Doctor, very quickly, without much time left on the clock, but very interested to ask you as well. What were some of the activities that's been put together to create awareness this month?
So our institute just launched our My ILD Facebook page. So basically it's a page that to educate the public and also the other healthcare professionals on what are the lung fibrosis all about. And we do share some of our patients' history, how they actually face the diagnosis and how do they actually endure the disease and how do they cope with the life. So it just to share some of the tips. And of course, we would actually put up some of the current treatment of the disease itself. And also another activity would be joining the world to share a postcard that actually can be downloaded on the Rainbow Across Border Facebook page that you could actually write to a
To some sort
patient,
of
even to a
non-infected.
doctors, to tell them to be strong or to be hero, even you are a lung fibrosis patient, to give some motivation.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. Take care and stay
Thank,
safe. And we hope to speak to
yeah.
you again. That was Dr. Syazatul, Sirol, Aflah, Director and Consultant Respiratory Physician from the Institute Perubatan Respiratory, Kuala Lumpur. On taking care of ourselves in the greater scale of things, perhaps looking at the economy and how we're bouncing back. We've talked about being resilient and coming out of this pandemic, but we've also talked about how do we battle the pandemic while we're in it, and what are some of the industries and sectors, what are they doing so that we can be able to pivot or transform while we're dealing with these challenges. And that brings me to our next topic, the pandemic pivot, transforming learning for the Malaysian capital market. Today, I speak to the CEO of Securities Industry Development Corporation, SIDC, Tengku Zarina, Tengku Chik. I'd like to bring, of course, Tengku in for our discussion today, understanding a little bit more about the Malaysian capital market. Tengku, it's good to meet you. It's good to see
Yeah,
you.
you too. You too,
Let's start with
Jessy.
this. Most Malaysians, especially those in the investment and business circles, now they may be familiar with SC, but for the benefit for our viewers today at large, could you perhaps share with us a little bit about the SIDC, about the corporation specifically and its functions, its role, and its services?
All right, thank you. First of all, Jessy, thank you so much for inviting me and SIDC to your segment this afternoon. SIDC is the training and development arm of the Securities Commission Malaysia. Our main mandate is to raise the standards of the capital market participants to support the growth and development of the industry. Yeah? So by market participants, Jessy, I would mean the professionals or the human capital from the new talents entering the market up to the board of directors, as well as the investors. Yeah. So Jessy, we deliver this mandate in the four pillars. Yeah. First, we set the professional standards and qualifications. So we do this through the implementation of the industry competency framework for the Malaysian capital market, and this framework this framework provides a foundation for the Securities Commission licensing examinations and continuing professional education, or CPE we call it. Yeah. So these are the main qualifications for anyone who's interested to pursue a career in the capital market. Now, capital market places very high emphasis on market integrity and shared accountability to ensure protection of investors. So this is a very important aspect of the industry where we
Let's perhaps
ensure.
just circle back and just try to underline, Tengku. What do we mean when we say capital market? Perhaps some elaboration on that.
Okay. All right. So technically, the capital market, Jessy, is an organized and inclusive market where individuals and business entities buy and sell debt and equity securities. Typically, examples of the securities could be stock and shares. We're familiar with that. Bonds and unit trusts. Now, from the business point of view, the capital market facilitates businesses in raising capital for their business growth. Again, generally, we are familiar with the stock exchange and the bond issuances, which are the normal route for businesses to raise funding for large companies. Yeah, for small businesses, Jessy, the capital market offers peer-to-peer or P2P financing and equity crowdfunding, ECF we call it, These are the innovative and inclusive products of the capital market that enable small, medium companies, including startups and new businesses, to raise capital, from a pool of individual lenders in the case of P2P, and from the public in the case of ECF. And these online platforms are registered and regulated by the Securities Commission. Now, Jessy, when businesses, big and small, have access to the capital to develop the business growth, naturally this enables the growth of the economy. Now, from the investor's point of view, people like you and me, the capital market facilitates the public to invest in businesses that they believe in. So again, essentially, the capital market is a place, where the businesses and investors are bridged together by the intermediaries, wherein professionals are trained to advise both the business and the investors. Yeah, so I think
Right. So this of course, in this particular crisis that we're in right now, this particular climate and situation, these, of course, are important in terms of helping to boost the market and ensure that we're resilient and we bounce back better as well. But as we talk about the pandemic, many organizations, both here in Malaysia, have looked at how they can be more digital. So in terms of SIDC, have you taken advantage of this, and how have you helped perhaps the industry to propel forward through the adoption and embracing digital?
Well, Jessy, I wouldn't want to say that we took advantage of the pandemic, but more for the fact that we took the road to coexist with the virus very early on. So we were very clear on one thing, our purpose, our mandate, that is to continue ensuring professional standards in the industry. So there were two main factors that we had to consider early last year during the first MCO, when the first MCO started. One is whether our industry will continue training their staff during the pandemic, when the cost cutting was paramount everywhere. And two, do we wait for the pandemic to be over? So as to the cost cutting, general understanding is that most companies will be cutting down their staff training first, right? But we chose to believe the opposite, where the road to recovery from the pandemic will need new skills. So learning in the capital market should not be disrupted during the pandemic. And second, we chose not to wait, because what was certain then and even now was the uncertainty, right? So we didn't know when the pandemic will end and so forth. So we developed strategies to quickly pivot to digitalization and unlearn the pre-pandemic modus operandi and relearn new ways of doing things to deliver our mandate.
So let's get to the crux of it. Of course, in the past year and a half or so, many people have lost their jobs. This has resulted in financial hardships, loss of livelihood as well. In what capacity has SIDC stepped in to help Malaysians address these issues? Of course, as a direct impact of COVID-19.
Yes, the pandemic really certainly, affected many people in Jessy, as the capital market. We worked with the Securities Commission Malaysia last year to develop schemes where we could help displaced workers from other industry to be retrained and reskilled so that they would have a chance to start a career in the capital market. So we did that as part of initiative under the Penjana program by the Malaysian government last year in June. I think you remember that. And I mean, perhaps I can highlight two initiatives. One, we had a scheme where we were enabling displaced workers with opportunity to enter the capital market. And second, we strengthened the youth employability within the capital market, where we wanted to ensure new graduates were still able to find jobs in the capital market by co-investing with intermediaries in providing training grants to them. Now, on the displaced workers, a notable training scheme was on the marketing representative training scheme. So out of, I think we had over 100 Malaysians sign up for the scheme, train, quickly fulfilling the allocated scheme quota. Now, out of 100 people, 77 of them, out of 100 trained, 77 of them actually passed assessments. And now I know that 44 of them, or more than 50% of these individuals, may already in the employment in the capital market. And a lot of them are actually from the aviation and hospitality industries. So we believe that it's a clear indicator that there is a demand, for us to come up with a platform where we can look at upskilling and reskilling for the general public to be competitive in the job market, specifically the government market.
Well, going strong at SIDC. Thank you for weighing in and sharing with us a little bit about what has been some of the developments and, of course, the schemes to help the Malaysian capital market bounce back and even through that sort of transform and learn as well. Tengku Zarina will speak to you again soon. Please do stay safe and take care. That was Securities Industry Development Corporation CEO Tengku Zarina, Tengku Chik, weighing in a little bit on the pandemic pivot. Of course, many of us have had to try to do things differently. We've also tried, to perhaps use that time to improve ourselves individually, professionally, and so on and so forth. But many social issues are still prevalent out there. And I want to bring your attention to something, a survey that was recently done. Now, according to this survey, by the Center of Governance and Political Studies in collaboration with the All Women's Action Society, better known as AWAM, it found that more than 50% of women between the ages of 18 and 30 have directly experienced some form of sexual harassment, and also found that 44% of the women experienced a teacher making sexually provocative jokes. I think for women at large, at some point in your life, you would have felt this perhaps to some extent. What were some of the other findings, you may ask? Well, there's a whole lot of stats here, and I'm going to run through this. 68% of women surveyed said they did not feel safe driving at night. Around 30% of the female respondents also said they regularly receive unwanted sexual messages on social media. And if you think about this for a minute, how many of us are on social media, men and women alike, throughout the day? In fact, there's one survey, if I remember correctly, said that we switch on our phone, as we unlock our phone, up to 1,000 times a day without even realizing it. Some 18% of these respondents also said that they were victims of sexual, instances from a family member, while 10% have actually been harassed in elevators. And so this brings up the question about what are we doing as a collective, as a community? And it's really important that we understand and are aware yet again of some of this that's happening within the society and at large. Now I move to the Health Minister, Khairi Jamaluddin. He says fully vaccinated travellers from overseas wishing to undergo compulsory home quarantine can now apply to do so through the home quarantine application portal. That's on the Ministry of Health's website. That begins today as well. Now he says on this portal, you will find the approval for quarantine application that will be received within 3 days of submitting a complete application as well. So do understand that there's a process, but also share this news for friends and family waiting to meet. Okay, let's take a quick look at what's happening internationally in our snapshot of international news mini segment. World Bank president said that a law firm's investigation detailing pressure from a senior World Bank official in 2017 and 2019 to boost a certain country's rankings in the bank's annual doing business report, quote unquote, speaks for itself. And a Brazilian president has created some international headlines. Jair Bolsonaro turned down British Prime Minister's call to get AstraZeneca vaccines during a meeting in New York yesterday. He's a skeptic, and he also bragged that his immune system is strong enough to fend off the coronavirus. I always say to friends and family, it's all okay until it's okay, and then it's a problem when it's not, once you're affected, if you're affected. So why take that chance as well? Now, that's my personal opinion. Ahead of the annual United Nations General Assembly in New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio also had a blunt word of advice for the Brazilian president. And he says, if he's not vaccinated, then don't bother coming. Let's hear what he said.
We're going to be reaching the whole world with vaccinations. Well, I want to start by applauding Secretary General Guterres for leading the way by calling upon everyone who participates in the General Assembly to be vaccinated, putting strong protocols in place. We need to send a message to all the world leaders, including most notably Bolsonaro from Brazil, that if you intend to come here, you need to be vaccinated. If you don't want to be vaccinated, don't bother coming, because everyone should be safe together. That means everyone needs to be vaccinated.
Mas aí chegou a Covid.
And the United Nations Secretary General also called for help yesterday from all countries to take action against climate change following a meeting of world leaders that addressed major gaps on emissions, targets, and climate finance. The UN chief and the British Prime Minister held a roundtable of world leaders with discussions aimed to ensure a successful outcome at the UN climate conference, even as recent reports does show that major economies are far off track on their goals and commitments in terms of emission and climate finance, for example. Now, here's a quick look at Twitter and what's been trending there on the Delta variant. Tweets regarding the increasing number of the Delta cases occurring across the globe. That's being rapidly discussed on Twitter as well. It is the Mid-Autumn Festival, so people have been tweeting out their wishes to family and friends as well. It's a nice time of the year. It's always nice when it's festive and people, start looking up towards the clouds rather than the doom and gloom. But nonetheless, we have to brave through this pandemic together. And hey, how can we do that? All stay safe and we get inoculated as well. The iOS 15 is the latest software update that's been widely talked about on Twitter for all its interesting features for all you iPhone people. That's my cue to leave you till I see you next time. That is tomorrow, same time, same place. Do stay safe, take care. And of course, you can tweet me if you'd like to share any views or opinions or talk about some social issues. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.